Okay, hello, and welcome to the third virtual training session in our Working from Home series. This one is Top 10 Tips in Excel, and it will be presented by Julie McCarthy and Danielle John Charles, both from Ticket.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Julie McCarthy. I'm a lead consultant at Ticket Limited. Welcome to another one of our virtual online training sessions that myself and colleague Danielle have been running over the last few weeks. Throughout this session, please use either the question answer panel or the chat panel if you have any questions. Danielle will answer some of them throughout the session, and at the end as well, we'll answer any questions that you have over the topics that we're covering in this training session. So within this session, I plan to cover the following with you. Working with lists. So how can you format a list and get Excel to format it automatically for you, and use some of the features such as sort and filter that you would want to use within a list. How can you remove duplicates from a list, especially if you've downloaded it from another program and you're not sure whether or not there could be duplicates. And also with the newer versions of Excel, when you are formatting a list as a table, how can you use what's called the insert slicer, which is a way of filtering the data that's in a list. So once we've had a look at lists, we're going to have a look at some of the formulas that come with Excel. So we're going to look at some of the really popular ones that will add up average cells, work out the highest, the lowest value within a range. But also, if you're working with list of data, specific formulas for those as well. So we have formulas that will change the case of text in cells. We have a formula called Concatenate that will string more than one cell together. So we're going to see how we would use those, and also how we could remove the formula out of a cell, so we're just left with the value. And also sometimes you may find you open up a worksheet and it's very hard to tell when you first open it where the formulas are. So there is a button that will show you whereabouts the formulas are in these cells. So we're going to see whereabouts that would be. We're going to see how we could create a simple chart based on some data that's in a worksheet, and then to finish off a little bit on printing. We always think printing is probably one of the easiest things that we do in any program, but in fact it's sometimes the thing that we spend the longest over, trying to fit everything onto one page, put headers and footers on. So we're just going to see how we would turn on some of these features within Excel. So Excel is a really fantastic program for maintaining lists, budgets, forecasts. You know, you don't always have to use formulas. You could just use Excel just to type up a straightforward list of names, addresses, telephone numbers. So we're going to start with working with lists. So I have an Excel file with a number of sheets in the bottom of it. And I'm going to start with my very first sheet, which is list. And first of all, just a few things about a list. So when you're building a list up, Excel, when you're going to start using some of its inbuilt features for lists, such as format as table or filtering, sorting, it does like your list to have a heading row. And what it does like you to do is just sort of tell it where the heading row is. So even if you just highlight it and put it in bold, it just makes that row stand out from all the others. So it normally would pick that up automatically as being the heading row. Also, when you're working with lists, try to avoid having blank rows and blank columns in your list, because as soon as Excel comes across a blank row or a blank column, it thinks that's the end of the list, and the next row below that, it thinks that's another list. So try to just keep your list continuous, a continuous set of rows, a continuous set of columns. Now I'm going to use the Home tab first of all in Excel to have a look at this feature here called Format as Table. This is a really useful feature when you're working with a list because it combines a number of functions all in one go for you. So if I have this list here and I know that I want to make it look more presentable, I'm going to do a bit of formatting with it. I want to sort it, put it in alphabetical, numerical order. I might want to filter it, pull out certain information from this, and I want to check if I've got duplicates. So I can do all of that in one go using Format as Table. So I don't need to highlight anything in order to do this. I just need to be somewhere in my list. And then on the Home tab, I have this button here, Format as Table. Now, when I click on there, the very first thing it wants me to do is it wants me to pick a look for my list, a look and feel. Do I want banded rows, a light, a dark colour background on my list? Do I want my heading row to stand out? So this one here has that in a dark blue colour. The only thing when you first use this feature is you can't get a preview. So if I was to hover over these, I have no idea at this stage what my list is going to look like. I just have to choose one. So I'm going to pick one, but if I don't like it, I can quite easily come back and change it afterwards. So to start with, I'm going to say that I'd like this particular one here. So I click on here, it comes up with this little box. It says, is this the data range that you want to format? And it starts to put these little dancing rings around your list. And as long as you haven't got blank rows or blank columns, it'll go to the very end. It's found that my list has a table and it's saying, I recognise, sorry, my list has headers. So it's saying, I recognise you have a header row. Yeah, I'm going to keep that selected. So I'm just going to click on OK at this stage. And it's done its first job for me now. It's given my list a look and a feel. What it's also done is it's given me a new tab at the top called the Table Tools tab, and it has a header called Design. And it started to give me now some functionality of what I can do with this list. So the very first thing that I might want to do is change the look and feel. Now I've actually seen it, I might think, no, it's a little bit over the top. I don't like it. I don't like the banding. So when I'm in the Design tab here, I have my table styles at the end. And now when I hover over them, I can see the difference. I can start to get a preview and I can see what my list is going to look like. You do have a more button here where you can then start to get even more options, and it really depends on that look and feel to what style you're going to go for. So I'm going to choose this one here. Now just be careful because this Design tab will only ever appear when you're in the list. So if I click outside of my list now, I'm just back in a standard cell. I've got my standard set of tabs. There's no Design tab on the end here. As soon as I click back into the list, the Design tab comes up. So it will only appear when you're actually in that part of the list itself. So what else can I do now I've formatted this as a table? So I have these set of options here, table style options, and I've got a tick in header row. That's to say that it's showing my header row in the list. If I deselect that, the header row disappears. I click on it again, it comes back. If I did have banded rows on, so every other background colour was a light shade, a dark shade, I could turn the banding on or off here. If I want my first column to look different or my last column to look different, I could turn these on here. I've turned that, it's put it in bold, I turn it off again. I am seeing these little filter arrows by the side of each of my columns, but I could turn those filter buttons off if I want to. I'm going to keep them on. Now this filter button will only appear in some of the newer versions of Excel, so you might not have that if you're on a slightly older version, but you should still see the filter arrows here, and we'll have a look at using those in a moment. If you want to add a total row to the bottom of your list, you can click on here, and right at the very bottom it puts a total in. Now what's really nice about this is it starts off as a sum, it's adding up the last column of figures in your table. If I click onto that total though, I get a little drop down list and I can change the calculation. So I might not want to add up the total, I might just want to count the number of items. I've got 142 items in this list, or what's the average value, or what's the highest value. So I can change, it's quite interactive, that formula there. I'm going to take it back to sum. When you add a total row, it always just adds right at the very end of the list, total row, and it only starts by adding a total in the last column. But if you have got numbers in other columns, I've got a number sold here, you can click in there you get the drop down list, and you can start to put formulas into other columns at that stage if you wanted to. And at any point I could turn the total row off. Now I'm just going to go back to the top of my list, because when you do format as a table, it will always put on auto filter, these little filter arrows. So you could do this without formatting as a list, but the nice thing is it does it all in one go for you. So if I just wanted to pull out all sales that were done within Europe, I could use my little arrow here now. It shows me all the different options that I have within this column, and I could turn off select all, just select Europe, that's the one that I want to see. And when I click on OK, it just pulls out the Europe sales for me. And it tells me down the bottom, it found 30 out of 142 records that matched Europe. Now, I always know what column has been filtered, because that column now has a funnel. So if I want to go back to seeing everything, I can click on the arrow with the funnel, I can select all, click on OK, and I now go back to viewing the entire list again. So I could filter on more than one column. It could be that I want to see all
Hi guys, sorry for the slight interruption. We're having a slight technical problem. We have lost some sound, so just bear with us one moment while we try to get that back for the minute, okay? Just hold the line for 1 second. Everybody, we are just trying to work on the technical issue. So while we're doing that, I thought I would just say hello to everybody. This is a typical of us embracing change right now and adjusting to a situation. As soon as Julie's able to reconnect to the meeting, we will continue. So just please keep an eye on the Q&As. Hopefully within the next minute or so, we should have a connection back. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, that's better, Judy.
Yes, you're back, Julie.
Sorry, I was just checking. I was just making sure that you could hear me again. So, can you see my screen at the moment, or is it stopped sharing?
It stopped sharing.
Okay, I'll just pop that back on then. Just, can everyone see it now?
That's better.
Yes.
Yep. Perfect.
We're back, yay.
Yes, sorry about that. So what part did you lose me? Was we okay on doing the filtering? Hello?
Yes, so yes, the filtering, we got past that. I think that was the last thing we did was the filtering.
Perfect. Okay, lovely. Sorry about that. Let's just carry on. So the filtering, as I say, when you format as a table, you get the drop down arrows, you can do the filtering, and as well as filtering, you can sort as well. So you've got the A to Z here. If you're in a text column, if you're in a value column, you'll have the values largest to smallest, smallest to largest. So the really nice thing about format as table, all contained in one screen. With the newer versions, you have insert slicer. The slicer is another way of filtering, but it's much more visible. So if I go on to insert slicer and I say that I want to filter by the region, so I tick region, it actually opens up a little slicer window showing all the regions that I have. And if I want to just see Scotland, I can actually filter from here, click on Scotland, and it pulls out all of the Scottish souths for me. You can have more than one slicer, sorry. So if I go back into the table and go back into design and insert another slicer for salesperson, so I now have two slicer windows, so I can have them side by side. So I've got my Scotland sales here, and I can say, show me the sales that Gun made in Scotland. And I can filter and much more visibly by using these slicer windows. Now, again, this is only available in the newer versions of Excel. So it depends what version you've got. You might not be able to see the slicer when you go in there. If you want to remove the filters within the slicer window, you just have this little button here that takes them off. And if I just want to remove the whole thing altogether, I can just click into it and on my keyboard just press my delete key and it removes it. So if I go back to the design tab, one of the other really useful features is being able to remove duplicates. So if I'm not sure is there duplicate rows in here and I don't want to sift through finding it myself, I can just click into remove duplicates, say look through all the columns, match off every single, look at every column, every cell, is anything within a row identical. So if I click on OK, it's found 3 for me, and it will remove them. So it doesn't show you where they are, they do just go. So if you're unsure whether or not you want to just remove them, you might want to take a copy of that list first so that you could compare it, but it will take them away. So I'm 3 rows less now, it has removed the duplicate for me. I'm just going to turn my total row off because one other really useful feature is if you do extend information on the end of a list that's been formatted as a table, you will find that as soon as you start to enter more than one cell, it automatically will start to drag down the format for you. You also at the very bottom of the table have this tiny little box here, and you can drag it down yourself just to pull the format down. So it just really tidies that up nicely for you. And then the last thing, if I go back to design, is if you don't want this functionality anymore, you just want to be left with your list, you can convert it back to arrange. So if I click to convert this back to arrange, it will come up saying, are you sure that's what you want? I can say yes. It still retains the formatting, which is great, but I'm now just in a standard list. If I click in the list, I don't have the design tab. If I want to filter now or sort, then on the home tab, I will have to click on sort and filter, turn my filter on, and again I get all the same functionality, but it's something that I manually have to go through and do. So if you are working with a list, just think about using this button. It's a really, really useful tool. Now I'm going to go on and have a look at this formulas tab here. One of the things that some of us will want to do is put some formulas into cell. Now we can do very basic formulas and we can do very complicated formulas. I'm going to look at using some of Excel's inbuilt formulas. Excel's got over 1,000 of these inbuilt formulas, and we're just going to look at a few of them today, just some of the popular ones. On the home tab, you have auto sum, and when you click on the little drop down arrow by the side of auto sum, you have the 5 most popular built-in formulas that come with Excel, which are sum, average, count numbers, max and min. And there are various different ways that you can use these formulas. I'm going to start off using sum. So if I want to add up my top row of numbers, there's about 3 different ways that I can put that formula into that total cell. So one way is I can highlight the numbers that I want to add up, plus the total cell where I want the answer to appear, go onto my auto sum button, tell Excel I want to do a sum, and it will automatically add those up and it will put the sum formula into this cell. And I can see the formula up in the bar here. If I wanted to copy that down now to east, south and west, I have my fill handle and I can drag that down and it copies. So that's one way to do the formula. The other way though is to just click in the cell where you want the answer to appear. So if I go into my total cell here, again, go back into auto sum and tell Excel the formula I want, which is sum. This way, it actually shows me the formula. It's going to pop into the cell, and it actually shows me the range of numbers that it's going to add up. And if I'm happy with that and I press enter, it adds those up. And again, I can click onto that cell, go onto my fill handle and copy that across. If I was being a little bit lazy, I'm actually going to delete those totals. And in fact, if I had a spreadsheet like this with this block of numbers and I want to total them, not only down the right-hand side, but also across the bottom, I can just do that in one go very quickly. I can highlight all my numbers, the total cell, sorry about that, the total cell where I want the answers to appear on the right-hand side, total cell across the bottom where I want the answers to appear. So I'm just doing the whole block of numbers and then also putting in the cells where I want the total to go. I get my formula, sum, and it just does the lot in one go. So I've got my totals now in my last column, and also I've got the totals across the bottom as well. Now I want to do an average and what was the highest and what was the lowest in each quarter. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to go and get my average formula. Just got to be a little bit careful because the average at the moment is trying to work out the average of north, east, south and west and my total as well. We never include a total in an average. So I'm just going to redirect the formula to say just those 4 cells, and I'm going to enter that, and I could copy that across. Now, if I wanted to work out what was the highest cell in the first quarter, I could use the formula here called max. And again, if I just direct the formula to north, east, south and west and I enter, it just picks up the highest value for me. And then the reverse of that, if I want the lowest value, I have min. Again, just those 4. And again, I could copy that across. Now, we have thousands of formulas in Excel, and that's just using 5 of them. The formulas tab has them all in different categories. Are they formulas that are to do with date and times? Are they formulas to do with financial? We've got the auto sum there as well. And it really depends on the industry that you work in to what formulas you will want to use. You know, if I look at financial, I might look at those and I get terrified just by the look of them. What are they? I don't work in a financial industry, so I don't have to use those. But there will be people in financial industries that probably use these every day. One of the really useful buttons in formula is this button here, show formula. So sometimes you open a spreadsheet that somebody has sent you, you're looking at it and you think, where are the formulas? I know there must be some in here, but I don't want to click on every cell trying to find them. So when you click on show formula, it will open up all the cells that have a formula inside them, and it actually shows you the formula that's in there as well. So you could print it off in that state, do a little bit of analysis, check the formulas are okay. It's an on-off button. You click on it again and it just shrinks it back to showing you the answer. Now I'm just going to show you a couple of text formulas that are really useful when you're working in a list. So you might find that you have downloaded a list from an external data source. It's come into your spreadsheet and it needs a bit of tidying up. My postcodes at the moment seem to be all over the place. Some are lowercase, some are upper, and some are a bit of a mixture, up and down. So I want them all to be in uppercase. So under text, we have formulas that will change the case of a cell. We have lower, changes it all the text to lowercase. We have proper, you'll get title case. And we have upper, that will put the text into uppercase for you. So I want all my postcodes to be in uppercase. So I'm going to click in this blank cell here by the side of my first postcode. And I'm going to go into text. I'm actually going to use my formula from here because it's going to help me. So I'm going to say I want to do the upper formula, and it brings up this little wizard and it tells me here what it's going to do: convert your text string to uppercase. And then it says, where is your text? Where's this piece of text? So I'm going to go and click in this cell here to say it's this one. My very first postcode, I want to put it into uppercase. I'm going to click on OK. It's going to put that formula in and it's going to put it into uppercase. Now it is a formula, so I can copy that down. Rather than drag, I'm going to go onto my little fill handle and I'm going to double click, because double click will just copy it to the bottom of the list for me. Now, when you're using the text formulas, you have to be careful with your result, because your result are still a formula. If I was to delete that original postcode, my uppercase formula gets deleted as well. So I'm just going to undo that to bring it back. So if you are using a text formula, mostly what you'll want to do to leave just the text is to strip that formula out of the cell. So the easiest way to do that is to highlight all the cells with the formula in and take a copy of them. And we're going to paste back directly on top of these, but we're not going to paste back as a standard paste because it'll just put the formula back in. We're going to paste it as a value. And when we paste it as a value, it strips the formula out of those cells now, and they now just become a basic text cell. In fact, I could now highlight those, go onto the edge and just drag and drop them and replace my previous set of postcodes that were there. Now, another really useful text formula, I'm just going to insert a row here, is one called concatenate, that strings together more than one cell. Now, I've got two cells here with everybody's first name and last name. And in fact, I just want their name to go into this cell. But the way that I want it is surname, a comma and a space, and then their first name. So in text, we have a formula called concatenate. I'm using Excel 2019, and they just have, for some reason, made the name smaller. They've just called it concat. But in older versions, it should say concatenate. So again, I'm going to pick the formula that I want. It comes up with the function wizard. So it says, where's the first piece of text that you want to string together? So I'm going to say it's Higgs. Now, I don't want in text 2 to directly put in Mike, because I need to put what I would like to separate between these two names. So text 2 is going to have a comma and a space. Text 3 is going to have Mike's first name. So you have to put, as each of these text boxes, the cell that you want to pick up, but also any separators between those cells, spaces, pluses, dashes, whatever you want. Now, it would keep going on. It tells me I could string 254 pieces of information together. I just want to do 3. I'm quite happy with that. I can see my result here. So when I click on OK, I get the 2 strung together. Again, I can double click, copy that down. They're all done. If I don't want the formula in there anymore,
Hi everyone. We seem to be having some technical issues today, so I apologise on behalf. I don't know what is actually the problem. I think there might be an internet connection issue. So we're just going to try and reconnect again. Thank you for your patience. So I apologise. These things happen sometimes. Hopefully we can get the connection back as quick as possible. So while Julie works on that, a few questions I've been asked. When this virtual session is finished, you will be able to view the session again on YouTube, or if you go onto LinkedIn on the ticket page, or again on myself or Julie's page. Megan will be sending out communications on all of this. So again, if you would like to look at this training again, send the links on to your fellow employees, please feel free when you get the communication sent out from Megan. Again, we have Julie just now connecting, so it may be that we have to quickly disconnect and reconnect again, but we are working on that, so just bear with us. We shouldn't be very long. Thank you.
hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. You're back.
Oh dear, the technical problems we have when working from home. I do apologise. Okay, so that was just showing you some of the formulas that are available, and I say the text ones are really useful. You know, have a look through them if you do have a bit of time. We've all probably got a little bit of spare time now working from home. Have a look through them. Click on them. I mean, there's some really useful, you can go into them. You know, I'm not even going to go through any of these ones, but with the text ones, for example, you know, what we was just doing before when we was looking, for instance, at proper, they've all got help here. You can click on them. It takes you onto a web page. It will give you more information about them. So you might just find, you know, you want to familiarise yourself with some of these features in here. One last thing to show you is printing. Now, just before we go into printing, I just wanted to quickly show you as well how you can create just a chart, a very, very quick way to create a chart based on some information that you've got highlighted. So if I wanted to put graphically into a chart, the areas here, north, east, south and west, and the totals, I'm going to hold my control key down and drag the totals. So I've picked out the text that I want, the values that I want, and I want to represent these graphically. Now we have some F keys across the top of our keyboard. If you are using a laptop, you might find that you might need to press your FN, your function key, in order to get this particular key to work. It's F11, but when you highlight some labels and you press some numbers, and you do F11, it creates a chart as if by magic, a lovely column chart for you to work with. You have two tabs, a design and a format. So in design, you can change the look of that chart if you wanted to. You have the option to change the color of the chart here as well. In quick layout, you also have the option to be able to have some extra titles that you could over type on as well. So I've got a title here that I could just type into. Also in design, you can change the type of chart. So if you didn't want a column, you could have a pie chart, you could have a bar chart, and you could just change the look of that chart. But just remember that F11 key. It's a really useful key for creating a chart. Now, lastly, printing. So just a couple of things I'm going to finish off with for printing. Normally one of the simplest jobs you want to do, but sometimes it can be the most frustrating when you try to fit it all onto the page in order to sort of hand out some printouts to people. Now, when you're printing, one of the first things you want to do is preview it. So if I go into File and I preview mine, it's telling me here 1 of 6. And if I start to look at each page, it's a long list, but I get this one extra little column that's just printing out on a separate page. Now, when I've been training for sort of quite a few years now, and I always remember I did a training session once, and I said to the class, you know, if this happens, what would you do? And I always remember a lady saying, oh, I'd print out the first 3 pages, and then I'd print out the last 6, and then on the last 3, I'd cut out that last column, and I'd sellotape it on the end of the first 3 pages. And I was like, oh no, let's try and move on from that. What else can we do? So we do have various features. We don't need to cut and sellotape. We can look at scaling, shrinking things down. I mean, one of the things you do have when you come into print preview is you have a button down the bottom here that shows your margins. You do have quite big margins in Excel when you print. So if you've just got that one column, you could show the margins and just try and reduce them to just try and fit that extra column onto that first page. And I've done that, great. Straight away, I've gone to 3 pages now. I'm never going to reduce this over 3 pages because I have got such a long list. I mean, I could change my top and my bottom margin just to sort of, again, give me a little bit more information on each page. But one of the things we have, if I come out of here, in the page layout tab, is we have something called print titles. So if your printout is going to go over more than 1 page, it's really useful to get headings repeated on every page of your printout. So I'm going to go into print titles and I'm going to say I want to repeat my first row at the top of every page. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to click somewhere in my first row. It puts these little $signs. If ever you see that, don't be frightened. It just means that that's a fixed reference. It's only ever going to print the first row and nothing else. When I click on OK, I don't see these titles being repeated on my screen. But if I go into print preview or print and I go on to the next page, every page now will have those titles. It's a really nice way of finishing a print job. if you do want to change anything about your print setup, if you want to make something bigger, smaller, you want to print your grid lines, then at the bottom of print preview, you have page setup. And in here, you can go into margins and adjust them from there if you wanted to. You can have headers and footers. So if you wanted to put something else in the footer, you could go into custom footer, put your name in there. And you have some of these buttons here. So on the right hand side, if I wanted the file name, I've got these options. That one puts in the path and the file. So when I OK it, I just start to see all of this extra information. And in the sheet tab, you can say whether or not you want your grid lines printed as well. So, you know, most of the things with regards to printing, we do through print, in print preview. But if you do want something like those print titles, they have to be done within the spreadsheet itself, under page layout. And you've got that print titles button there. So that's a really useful feature in Excel. Okay, so I'm going to finish off there. I'm going to go and out to any questions that we may have over what we've covered throughout this session. Do apologise again for the losing my voice throughout some of it. But have we got any questions on what we covered in this session?
So, Julie, there was a question by Karen Rock. I've answered part of it, but I thought maybe you could give some tips on the second part. Is there a function to reverse concatenate? There isn't, but if you wanted to remove title from full name and place in separate columns, are there any tips on the on reversing concatenate or changing the columns?
Yeah. I mean, there isn't an actual formula that will reverse concatenate. You do have to, in data, we have a command called text to columns. So if I was in my my text sheet here and I did want to separate these, for example, if I just have to make sure I've got enough space, but I could highlight those, and in data, if I go to text to columns, I can find it, I've lost it. There it is. So highlight those, sorry, text to columns. So I'd normally keep it on delimited because it's going to find a space or a character that you specify. You go through a little wizard screen. So if I go on to next, so I could say my separation for me is on a comma and a space. So I want the space, but I also want the comma. And I don't know if you can see, it takes those symbols out and it's going to put a line break in instead for me. And in fact, if I now finish that, it will split them. So probably the best way of splitting, of separating, not use a formula in the data, use text to columns.
Brilliant, thank you.
Anything else?
That's all of the questions that I have. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, all the questions that we've come through, we've answered now. So if anybody else has any questions they'd like to put through.
No? Okay, well, just to say thank you very much for joining me for this session and for bearing with me on the loss of voice. But if you do need any extra help on any of the programs that we've covered on these virtual sessions, whether that's Teams, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or any of our other products, please contact us on hello@ticket.com and one of us can get back and help you with any of your queries that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.